This podcast is for entertainment purposes only. The hosts are not trained professionals, and their opinions come solely from personal experience. In this episode, we discuss fictional depictions of trauma and violence that may not be suitable for all audiences. Please take care of yourselves. Specific content warnings for each episode can be found in the show notes. Events in the media are discussed in approximate order of escalation. This episode contains spoilers.
Broken Kingdoms by N.K. Jemisin is a book about how choices shape characters' destinies, even when their essences would seem to deny them a chance at happiness. Hi, I'm Nicole.
And I'm Robin. And for our factions, we have our point of view character, Oree Shoth and Shiny. A long list of gods and godlings. We have Madding, the Lord of Debts, Sia, Inna, Kitter, the Blade, Lil, the Hunger, Nemmer, the Lady of Secrets, Pythia, the Terror, Roll, the Lady of Compassion, Obro, Nahadoth, the Lord of Shadows, and Tempest, the Bright Lord, Yin, the Grey Lady. And then for human members of the Order of Intempest, we have Privet Rimarndi. For the New Lights, we have Hado, Sarim Arameri. Yeah, Sarim Arameri. And Data. And then, as the head of the Arameri, we have Tavril Arameri.
So, we are going to kind of talk, for our minor character spotlight, we are talking about a character called Shiny, who is immortal, and we're going to be, so, he's immortal, but he is explicitly human. Which means that he can and does die. He just resurrects. If there's a good,
I would say he's more enduring than immortal, since the part is death.
That's good. That's a good point. But his soul, his consciousness is immortal. His body is not. Was how I was thinking of that. But I think no, that's a good distinction. But yeah, and he so he has his whole. Everything about him in the book is sprinkled with all of these different times that he dies. Like, it's not even just a thing that happens. It's something that gets factored into other plot points that, if we need to do this thing, he needs to die, and he'll be fine. Like, it's very Jack Harkness-esque.
Yeah.
In a way. We actually learn that his story kind of begins off-screen when he is put into this state of being, and he starts out by starving himself or just, dehydrating himself. We're not given explicit which one. We know that he dies twice, and my personal headcanon is that he dies of dehydration once, and then he dies of starvation the second time, but I actually don't know what order it's in. It's just funnier to me that way.
Yeah, you joked that.
I think it makes sense.
Interesting thing to joke about. Yeah, that he would not realize he needed to drink water.
And then he would die.
And then
then he would wake up, and then he would go, oh, okay, fine, I need water. And then he just goes, man, I don't need food, and then he dies again. Like, yeah,
I would say food never even occurred to him.
Until until he dies the second time. Yeah, and then he that's how he starts out his existence, is by not realizing that human needs are like necessities and not just, and like they're a thing that he's gonna actually have to partake in now. So there's some accidental deaths like that, but he also, in canon, explicitly on screen, injures himself, just takes shots that he could have avoided and just dies for it because whatever. Like he there's a couple different times where we either know about or we see on screen where he's just doing something with something sharp and goes, I could stab myself with this, wonder what would happen. Shank. Dies.
And isn't our introduction to him is Oree comes home and, like, slips in his blood.
Yeah, because he killed himself.
He's killed himself.
Yeah. Just, knife, slice. Like, it's this very just careless disregard for the fact that his body can and will die, because it doesn't matter to him. He does not care. And it's not like he's looking at this going necessarily like, oh, I want it to be over. Because even if he wanted that, like, killing himself doesn't actually end anything for him. He just comes back. And there's several different characters that kind of make jokes about, like, if he is genuinely injured and you need him to recover, it is faster to just kill him off and wait like 5 minutes than it would be to try and tend to his wounds and nurse him back to health the way you would a mortal human.
And it does seem like dying
is like a reset button. Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, it hurts. Well, he feels everything, and then he just is better now. It's this really wild. It's really almost. It's not comedic.
It's not played for laughs
at all. But it's also definitely not like this gravitas of how overwhelmingly weighty this thing is. Like, it's very handled very matter-of-factly. Like, oh, okay, well, he will come back to life, so here's where we go from there. And it's I don't know. It's interesting to read. I just
thought of an analogy for the way Oree reacts to it, because if you haven't read these books, us saying he dies over and over, and yes, it hurts, but, like, it's mostly inconvenient.
Yeah.
Like, the thing that I think best conveys this is if he compulsively, repeatedly moved a long, low stool into the center of the room, like, every day. And every day trips on it and falls over, and then Oree is like, why did you put this stool there? And then puts it back. And then every day he pulls it out, trips over it. It's like, it hurts. It's not pleasant. He keeps going.
You could push him over the stool if you wanted to.
Clearly some pathology is going on if someone wants to repeatedly drag this into the middle of the room and trip over it. But it's not going to end him.
Yeah.
So that's my little analogy there. If you haven't read these books, I hope that helps rather than being even more confusing.
And it's important to note that the pathology, so to speak, at play is a magical compulsion. Or a magical...
Does he have
I wouldn't say it's a compulsion. It's a magical edict. It's a magical reality. He will...
Thou shalt not die.
Yeah.
Or thou shalt not remain dead.
Pretty much. Like you will live and die as a human forever. Over and over. Okay. Forever is negotiable, but that depends on a lot of things.
It's until you fulfill a set of conditions that are definitely not fulfilled.
In 1 or 2 lifetimes?
One. Well, yeah. Because this is only 10 years after the conditions started.
Yes. But it's just this... And he... I don't know. There's just this kind of feel about it being this thing that he almost feels like it's inevitable. Like, of course he's gonna die. Of course he's gonna to reset. And so, like, I would almost argue the trauma here is less that he wants to die, but more that no matter how much dying hurts, inflicting that trauma on his mortal at the moment body is he almost sees it as like it's being handed to him as a punishment. And it's something like, it's almost I wouldn't call it a form of self-harm, because it is a punishment being inflicted on him. But that just disregard for, like, he could completely live a life where the only thing he would die of is old age. He could, but he won't.
Yeah.
He won't.
He hasn't even stayed alive long enough to find out if his body would age.
Yeah.
And a thought that I just had is that it's not, I'm trying to catch it. It's not self-harm. Like, that isn't really quite right. But he's, and the trauma we're talking about isn't loneliness, but he is driven by this intense sense of loneliness where he has been told, go away from us, we don't want you because of what you did. Go be with these gnats, these humans. What must seem like forever, since his nature is to not change, generally speaking. It must feel like he is never going to be around anyone again. And placed in that context, the apathy and suicidal tendencies make complete sense. And I know you know that from reading the book, but just for those who are listening to this without reading it, like, that's the backdrop. He's not bored.
No,
like,
there's stuff
sometimes
to do.
When he kills himself, he's bored. Yeah, sometimes he's bored. Sometimes it's they jumped out of the tower and his body is shattered and the quickest thing to do is kill him this time. But a lot of the time, it's harder to know since he's not a point of view character, but from things he said and conversations with other people, it does seem like it's driven by this very intense loneliness.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, I don't know. That's really, I think you hit it. Like, he's lonely and he wants to,
he doesn't know what he wants, but he knows he wants not this, but he can't get this. And so he tries over and over and over to get not this.
I almost wonder if part of it is, if I die enough times, will they forgive me?
Or feel sorry. Will if I can pack in all the suffering, will I have suffered enough?
Yeah, no, because you're right. He desperately wants to go back to them and be himself again, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah, not in this book. Now to Oree and Kidnapping. We have two main instances of this.
Yeah, so the first one is when the order keepers of the city tried to kidnap her from her market stall. And it's kind of odd because initially she wasn't actually a target until she demonstrated her magic by accident.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, she was not only a kidnapping target, but they were, I mean, really, we're putting this as kidnapping. Really, they were trying to arrest her. They thought she was guilty of the murder that had just taken place. But they didn't say, like they very much treated it as, like, there's no evidence against her. There was no really even evidence at the scene. This wasn't a human murder, so they, like, who even knows how they were going to go about this? But they literally just saw it as, oh, you have any kind of magic about you at all, guilty.
In fairness to them, apparently her entire body was glowing, which would be a fairly strong level of... Oh no, wait, was her whole body glowing then?
No.
No, it was just him. It was the order. It was, no, she was not glowing.
Nope, she was not glowing.
She will glow later.
She'll glow later.
Mix those two moments up.
No, but they literally just... So they tried to kidnap her and failed because Shiny stepped in and got kidnapped kind of instead. But, like, this is, like, a theme here. And so it's worth noting at this point that it's a lot of... So when she is more vulnerable to antagonistic attacks because of her blindness. And so there's a very weird, like, I don't know, paradigm may or may not be the right word here, where she's blind and working, running, selling a stall, selling things that she makes. And she's just like, they were questioning her because she went down the alleyway at all. And then they immediately jump to, oh, she has any magic. It's her. She's the killer. And then Shiny jumps in to defend her. So they grab him, but they still want to kidnap her. They still want to attack her. Like, there's this whole dichotomy thing there where it stops, but the reason her blindness matters in this instance is that she doesn't really totally know what's going on the whole time. Mm-hmm. And so, from a perspective in the book, there's very much this, like, we kind of get, like, this whole cacophony of what they are trying to do, what the Order Keepers are trying to do, but it's like we have to, almost even as an audience, we have to kind of piece it together, because she's trying to piece it together as it's happening, because all she knows is the change in the way the sound is going. Like, she doesn't even know that she's being defended at first. And, like, Shiny came to the marketplace with her, but also, like, it's just an overlapping layer of just, like, not enough information, because our protagonist doesn't have enough information. But then the second time it happens
is when
later.
Yeah. So for the second time that she's taken, and really it's the second time that is responsible for us framing it as kidnapping, and not some other facet of it, like the ableism that is involved a little bit.
Yeah.
I say a little bit because they are not trying to be ableist, and I understand that people aren't usually trying to be ableist. But there is a degree where no one bothered to narrate to her what's happening, because no one is thinking, we should definitely make sure that the blind person we're trying to arrest knows exactly how much we are losing this fight.
Yeah.
So that's kind of part of why she doesn't have enough info. But then with the new lights, they very specifically kidnapped her, stole her out of what should have been a safe place where she was staying, kidnapped a bunch of her friends and her lover. And here it's kidnapping and indoctrination. Like, they are a cult. She notices...
Explicitly.
Very specifically, they are a cult. Also in the religious sense that they are an insular sect of a religion. Mm-hmm. They claim to serve in Tempest, but they are not the state-sanctioned version of it. And she notices things like the feel of the cloth is rough, and I think she asks if the clothing is white, and she's told no, it's like a gray, because if it were white, then we'd be trying to be too pure. So even though she can't see it, she gets enough information to know that a lot of what are kind of classic cultish indoctrination stuff is going on. Mm-hmm. And then in this place, and you had wanted to talk about this part.
I think this is important.
What?
Yeah, go ahead.
You had wanted to talk about this part, is that, so within the cult, there's a bunch of different stuff that they're doing, and we get a little bit of it because the book really isn't how she was taken in by a cult, because she manages to fight a lot of the indoctrination. Yeah. But one of the things that they do to try and break her down, whether it was on purpose or whether they just didn't think about its impact.
She asked. This was on purpose. So we see her canonically in the book. She uses a walking stick, a cane, to get around. Mm-hmm. And when she's kidnapped, they don't take that with them. And one of the first things that she asks when she wakes up is for a stick or something so that she can navigate.
Like, and literally anything.
Yeah, and she is told no. And when we say anything in the book, there's a couple different times when she doesn't have her own stick available that she just grabs, or if somebody finds her something. Like, at one point, like she uses a broken broomstick handle. Like, she did not need, like, a hand-carved, perfect cane built for her. She just needed a stick. And she was told, no, I'm sorry. We don't want you to be able to navigate on your own. We are keeping you a prisoner. And because you are blind, we are using the fact that you need an aid to constrict your autonomy.
Yeah.
Like, that was intentional.
Yeah.
And that also includes, they have, just, like, we have it on here as forced labor. It's just, like, cleaning of the temple that they're in, the area that they're in.
It's forced labor because they're made to be there and they're not getting paid. Yeah,
so, but it's cleaning. It's cleaning work is what they're being told to do. And I say they, I mean her and anyone else who is a novice initiate. And they don't even give her anything to navigate during that time. Like, she's literally cleaning with nothing to even know where she is or what's going on or anything. Intentionally.
And then to punish her, after some stuff that goes down, to punish her, they lock her in her room for days and days. And eventually she asks just to get to be on the cleaning detail again, and she is told no. And Data gloats that this means the indoctrination is working, because it means that she is so desperate that she just even wants the routine of that forced labor. And he, like, says it to her in face, basically. Like, he specifically says that, oh, see, you, when you have nothing, you then want this routine. And I don't remember if he uses the word indoctrination or not, but he is gloating about this concept in particular. That's like, we the cult, we have kidnapped you and we have broken you down. Yeah.
It's just not... There's a lot of things here where... I mean, really, it's just a lot of examples of the same thing, where, you know, she's being, her movement and her autonomy is being restricted because it's more convenient for someone else if she is under their control. Yeah. We didn't actually put this in our notes, but I do also want to mention the offer that she was given at the end of the book. Essentially, again, be restricted to the palace or die.
Oh.
Like,
yeah.
be
we
here.
We will talk about it in a different way in the next segment, but yeah,
but it's important to mention here too. Yeah. Yeah. She was given a good deal, quote unquote.
The good
deal is you might live if you agree to not be our slave. We don't do that anymore, but you could be restricted to here forever.
Yeah, you can be in the palace forever, and if you go anywhere or do anything we don't want you to do, we can, not only will you die, we can kill you remotely.
Yeah. You can snap our fingers and end your life. Like, okay.
Yeah, that's what she's offered. And it's interesting in terms of the way the author's framing this trauma, because having kidnapping and loss of autonomy as something inflicted on her or threatened against her by every faction with any kind of power.
Yeah.
By every human faction with any kind of power, from the Order Keepers to the New Lights to Vril and Sky. It makes it a little bit. It makes the who's the good guys and who's the bad guys a little bit murkier. And if you want to say they're all the bad guys, then I'm not going to fight you on it on this particular point.
I think they're all the bad guys.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't. The way, for me, that's hard because I love Tavril so much in book 1, but it's hard to be a nice person and be in charge. Which is a thing I would love to get to talk about for some other book. That's not this book. But
it's not this series. I don't think we have any series. I don't think we have any heroes in this entire series. We have antagonists at best. Or not antagonists. We have anti-heroes at best. We have people who happen to be points of view at best.
Like even like Shiny and Madding, like it takes there's a lot of care taken from the author to push back against the idea of any of them wholly being good, even Oree. Alright, speaking of no one totally being a hero in this book, for Oree, we have guilt in the very specific form of her body being a weapon. It's both used as a weapon, and it just is a weapon without really any specific work on her part.
Mm-hmm.
It's mostly luck that she hasn't already killed someone by accident.
I was wondering about that. Like, she's never bled in the presence of...
She's never bled around Madding? Like
at all?
Not to be graphic, but, like, they've never had period sex? Like, this book acknowledges the existence of menstruation, so...
Yeah.
That could have been something that it mentioned. And they didn't, so... Okay.
Yeah.
Kind of wonder if that would count, but alright, because that's not lifeblood, but... Anyway,
I don't think blood is split into categories in your body.
Magically, different mythologies will have different things. I don't know what one this has.
But the property here is just blood. It's not her lifeblood, it's her blood. I would assume that it counts as the same.
So then we run into... How did she never accidentally kill him during period sex? But okay, alright, I guess... I don't know what's going on with there, because the book has a lot of sexy stuff, but it is not specific in that way. And their relationship is in the past. So, specifically what's going on with her blood is that because she is a demon in this series being defined as... the offspring, however distant, of a god and a human. Mm-hmm. Or someone who is then the descendant of the offspring of a god and a human. Demon blood can kill gods and godlings. Anyone who's read the book and has a quibble for use of the word gods, she is told your blood can kill gods. And so in terms of guilt and fear, that framing it as gods and godlings is appropriate to this particular discussion. So her blood specifically was used to kill her lover, Madding. Like, what's the guy's name?
Mm-hmm.
Data used her blood to, like, make an arrow, and then that arrow killed Madding. And she felt like responsible for this, even though she found out that her blood was a weapon almost immediately before Madding was killed. And it was kind of like, this is your blood and it is deadly. And then Madding is dead. There wasn't a whole lot of time.
Yeah.
It was, your blood's a weapon. This is an arrow made of your blood turned into a literal weapon. Your lover is dead.
Yeah.
And then in terms of, like, guilt... There's also, like, this ambiguity going on where because Data is also a demon and he's the one whose blood was used to kill Roll and several other gods before he got a hold of her, she can't be sure which gods... After a certain point in time, she can no longer be sure which gods were and were not killed with her blood. And it seems as though she feels guilt, as though all of the dead gods are her fault, whether or not it was her blood, and even though she didn't kill any of them directly.
Yeah, she really feels guilty just that anyone has died because someone used her to do it. Haku, what are you doing? Sorry. Our junior assistant editor just tried to dig behind my back at the chair. Like, what? Haku, come here. Come here. Okay, sorry.
It's alright. She has to pretend to die at the end of the book in order to avoid being locked up, see our previous topic, or potentially killed even for existing, and then it's not enough, and so she ends up kind of like alone, or not quite alone, eventually alone, and away and separate from everyone she's ever known, except for Shiny, who she's only known for like less than a year. And even then, it's not enough, and people still come after her. So as guilt, we have that her blood can kill gods, many of whom are her friends, but she cares about them in general. And then we have the specific facet that her body is a weapon that is used against her lovers. As we mentioned, Madding was killed with the arrowhead that's made from her blood, and Data and the other new lights seem to take delight in taunting her with the knowledge of that.
Oh, yeah. Like you just like, the fact that her body is being used to kill people is like the number one leverage against her for the rest of the book.
It's like they're swinging her arm into someone else's face, and then they're like, why are you hitting him? Why are you hitting him?
Yeah.
Why are you hitting him?
Like, if you would just let me control your arm, you wouldn't hit them anymore. And it's like, hey, whoa.
Not how any of this works. It's not how this works. So Madding dies because of her blood, and then, just when she thinks maybe everything will be fine at the end, she then is threatened with death. She's threatened with death because somebody else could use her blood as a weapon.
Like ever.
Right.
Ever in her life.
I don't know, like, to me this has a little bit of the same feeling. I'm pretty sure I've used this analogy before. I know I've used it with you. I don't remember if I've used it on the show before. But it has a little bit of the feeling of, we can't have gay people in the FBI because someone might charge them with blackmail. Oh, or someone might blackmail them. Oh, who's gonna blackmail them? We are, because you can't be gay and be in the FBI. Like, for anyone who doesn't know that fun bit of American history. Yeah. That was a thing. But yeah, it has a little bit of that feeling of like, so we need to use you, we need to stop other people from using you as a weapon, because someone might want to use you as a weapon. Oh, who wants to use me as a weapon? Oh, we do. We want to use you as a weapon, and we're very worried that someone else will, so we should probably do it first. Yeah. Except she's a person. And so then, and the gods threaten her with death if she doesn't leave Shiny. They give her 1 day to think about it, and either she can die, and that she doesn't want to do that. She's okay with dying, it seems like, but she doesn't want...
In that moment.
Yeah, right, at that particular moment. She is okay with dying, but she doesn't want him to... She doesn't want him to break. She doesn't want him to be unable to ever love another mortal, because if he never learns to love mortals, then he will never be done with his punishment. And she does not want him to be eternally punished. And so again, we've got guilt, where if she doesn't die, then he'll be wrecked. And it ends up being that he offers to leave so that they are not together. Offers. He declares that that's what he's going to do. Yeah. It's just... it's really well handled in the text. Like, her whole existence is a potential weapon. And people freaking out over it and guilting her over existing when she didn't ask to exist, and definitely didn't ask to exist in this manner, is just, it's so well handled.
Yeah. It's just, it's really... So the way this is all set up in the story, I actually really like that it starts out with her just being a person. And the more she finds out about different things about herself, I mean, because she has questions about different identity things and different, like, magical things and different, like, personal things with herself from the beginning of the book. But we start out with her not having answers to those questions. And it's kind of one of those where it's like, you get to the end and you would almost rather never have an answer. Because just her having that answer exposes her to this manipulation and this potential for that guilt and potential for people trying to hurt her and use her. Because if she didn't know, then no one would have leverage over her. Like, it is really well written. It's really well done. And it's just very interesting to read. And also, I will say this is not, even after having read book 1, where we knew about the existence of demons and then their blood being dangerous, we already had that information. This is not a book where either it feels like, oh, plot twist, whoa, like, it doesn't feel like that. It feels like it makes sense, like it's a natural conclusion. But at the same time, I definitely did not read it anticipating it. It was just very smoothly integrated into the text.
Oh no, and it was definitely not.
It just kind of flowed, and it just made sense. But it wasn't something like, there's a lot of books I read where I like, you know, I'm like, oh no, this is going to be the ending, isn't it? And even though this one had all of the clues, this story was written in such a way that I didn't really care about trying to figure it out because there were so many other things happening that mattered. If that makes sense, like... Yeah,
and we kind of have this trust that was built up with book 1 that the weird interstitial narration will make sense by the end and it'll be really cool. Like, the author had already built up that trust by carrying it off once. Yes. And so I was not super worried about the interstitial, and then you find out at the end what it's about, and it's like, oh my goodness. But specifically with the revelation of her being a demon, part of what helps is the very peculiar definition of the word demon in this text. It's not, oh, by the way, you were actually born in hell, because that wouldn't really get carried off very well here.
No.
It's like, I'm human, but my eyes are weird. I'm human, but I can see magic.
Yeah, that seems to be her
I'm human,
personal story arc.
Do magic.
Her personal story arc. Her personal story arc seems to be, I'm human, but, oh, whoops. Like.
And then it's an ever escalating series of but, and then never mind, I'm not human.
Yeah. Well, not fully human.
Yeah.
She's human enough for the curse to count.
Yeah. Oh, well, it was mortals. I don't remember if it was phrased as humans.
Oh, I thought mortals. It was humans specifically. Only because otherwise he would be constrained to help every single animal and bug and insect also.
I was thinking about that.
Because he has to live as a human.
Mortals. It's definitely, you may call upon your power only in great need and only to aid these mortals for whom you hold such contempt. So, mortals for whom you hold such contempt definitely implies humans. And that this language is from the 100,000 Kingdoms.
Yeah, it's the initial.
You will wander among mortals as one of them, unknown. Yeah, so... Yeah, it is mortals. It would be interesting for him to, like, truly love, have companionship with, an elephant or a horse.
Or like a dog.
Or
have a dog companion.
A dog would be more likely.
Well, more, like, not necessarily, but...
More, of the animals to randomly have an extremely deep bond with, there is a certain trope around dogs.
There is.
That's what I mean. On to the wrap-up and ratings. For the gratuity rating for Suicidal Tendency, okay, for the dying a lot, that feels severe, just going with what was the most graphic depiction of one of the events.
But
we also...
I mean, I think it's severe.
Yeah. There's ideation involved enough that a person who doesn't speak a whole lot still manages to communicate to the point of view character some part of their ideation, and then we also have a lot of depictions of the results of that ideation.
I mean, we have more than that. We have explicit descriptions of death and how and why. It's just severe, full stop.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, you say severe full stop, so I just want to double check. Does it rise to the level of torture porn?
No, not in this book.
Okay.
No, because it's not depicted in a way that is idolizing it. It's just very descriptive.
Right. Okay. Just wanted to make sure, because I agree with that. Just wanted to check. For kidnapping, for the gratuity rating, weird. I feel moderate for this.
I don't. I think it's severe.
You think it's severe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially with her descriptions of the ableism involved and how it makes her feel.
Oh,
the other, like, the terms that she could be released under and the blackmail involved. Like, no, it's so this could be severe.
Okay, so I was picking up more on how much care was taken there.
Yeah, there was a lot of care taken, but also it's pretty severe.
Okay. I'm in the middle of a kidnapping sequence in a different book that I'm reading, and this is toned down a bit from that, but yeah, I think that and the other unnamed thing I'm reading, it just, I guess, would both be different levels of severe. So in my head, I was like, it's less than this other thing. Okay. For the trauma, for the suicidal tendency, it is integral to the plot. It is.
Wait, did we rate the guilt?
I'm sorry, you're right, we did not rate the guilt. For the guilt, for the gratuity rating, the guilt,
I actually think this is moderate.
Yeah, it's moderate. Like, the consequences are severe, but the consequences are bound up in the kidnapping, and so it's a whole mess. Yeah. But most of the severe bits are related to kidnapping, and most of the moderate bits are related to the guilt.
Yep. Okay. Now.
Onto suicidal tendency. Is it integral? It's integral. It just is.
Yeah. Kidnapping is also integral.
Yep. And the guilt. Everything's integral. Quick check. Do you feel like any of them could have been interchangeable?
No.
Okay.
Not and have it still be the same story.
I
will say with these books, there is not a lot of extra.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of details in general that are like, just could have been something else and are just are just in there. Like, everything is pretty, very explicitly intentional and necessary. Just, like, as a series.
Like, in the first book, some of the aesthetics could have been interchangeable, but in this book, where the main character can't see, you don't even have that.
Right.
Right. To mention it.
Nope. Everything is very, very purposeful.
Yeah. That's nice. Was the trauma treated with care? Suicidal tendency, I think enough.
Yeah, it's either yes or enough. It's a pretty severe topic, and there isn't really a way to have it happen on screen in a way that's not severe, but the language used to talk about it is like bare bones, basic, minimum. You get the point. It's not super, like, descriptive, in a visceral way at all. It's just kind of there.
And also, there's a lot of points where it's off screen. Like, every time it's on screen, it's severe, but there's also even more implied off screen, and I think the combination of those 2 points toward it being treated with care.
Yeah. Yeah.
Along with the specific language involved. For the kidnapping, I think it was.
I think it I would argue for enough.
Okay.
Because we do definitely get it. I don't think it's care. Okay. I don't think it wasn't treated with care. I think that the descriptions and the reactions we get because our protagonist is blind. In a weird way, her not knowing what's going on kind of protects the reader a little bit, but also there is a lot of her own fear and confusion and anger because she doesn't know what's going on. And kind of like this helpless feeling of like things are just happening to her in a way that I don't think was treated callously or carelessly at all. But I do think it pushes it over to the level where it was treated with enough care, because especially if you're someone who has felt like that or who has a disability potentially that makes you feel that way when people are just doing things to you or to your stuff or...
Okay.
You know, I think the author did a really good job of not making it, again, kind of more that it needed to be, but...
So enough care, but it's probably going to resonate strongly with someone who has...
enough care, but there's a likelihood... There's more of a likelihood that it'll resonate than not, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Thinking about how we do our care ratings, it seems like we say no care when it's enough that even if you have no overlapping trauma, it's very stressful.
Yeah.
That feels like how our rating is shaking out.
Yeah, our rating is definitely shaking out where if almost nobody is going to feel this scene in a bad way, that it's treated with care. If some people might, but only with direct trauma, then it's enough care. If some people might, even without direct trauma, it's not enough. And if everybody hurts, then it's just no care.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, that's fine. That's good.
Yeah. Feels like a good metric.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. We didn't know it was going to be quite like that when we made these ratings, but I'm very pleased with how well they've worked out and how consistently we've been able to apply them, it feels like. All right, so on to the guilt. The guilt, I would argue for not enough care. So
okay,
it's either barely enough or not enough, because there's so much of a language of like
it's your fault for being there,
and it's your fault, and that's got a lot of ideation that's gonna overlap, which I think moves it from enough care to not enough. And then I think I've got to err on the side of caution and say, like, not enough care. Like, it doesn't...
Yeah, no, I agree. I think if we're not sure...
we should err on the side of caution and say not enough care. Like, it's well handled, but it is stressful. Probably the only thing that keeps it from being more stressful is that there aren't very many passages with that specific language. But what's there is very specific and very focused. For the point of view for the trauma and aftermath, it's Oree.
Yeah.
For everything. This is one of those single protagonist books. We do get her being told other people's thoughts as it relates to certain bits of trauma.
Yeah.
And so we get Shiny's own words describing his trauma in a very, like, really, really good scene. We get Shiny's own words on his trauma, but it's filtered through Oree.
And I think it's important. So I really like the way this happens, where it's not just, oh, they told me this, so. Instead, we actually see on screen Oree having that conversation. And so, yeah, it's very much through her perspective. It's very much through her eyes, but it's through her eyes as told by our main character. It's very good. It's a very good way of doing that, where we, the audience, get to hear it directly from the person talking and the person experiencing it, but without it being, with it still being through our main protagonist.
Yeah. Are you ready for the aspiring writer tip? And do you have one?
Do I have one? I don't know if I have one for this book. Well, no, actually, I'm not sure if we've had this one before. I feel like the answer is no, but I think, see, the problem is the aspiring writer tip I want to give, I think is the same one we recorded for a different book.
Okay.
So
I have one.
Okay.
Especially, there's going to be a fine line between not having your characters process trauma and having a book that is nothing but them talking about processing trauma. But I think this book, because this is it feels like a very dialogue heavy series so far.
Oh yeah.
Like the first book was dialogue heavy because it's all these political games and it's her going from room to room to have all these different conversations. Here, it's dialogue heavy and internal thoughts when no one is around heavy, where she's vaguely talking to us.
Yeah, both of these books are, at least so far in the series, are very much a narrator style story. And so we get the dialogue that they're telling us about, and we get their internal communication with us as the audience.
And that's not uncommon.
It's great. Oh no, it's great, but it's done in a way where it doesn't feel like it's just dialogue forever.
Oh, it
feels
doesn't.
Like a story.
It was just that when I was going to do like my little short written reviews right after I read this, I was like, this is a bunch of really good conversations while a bunch of stuff happens in between conversations. And it's really well done. And part of what, in this particular book, and again, like, please don't use a disability as a gimmick. Like, that would suck. I don't want someone to think that that's the advice. But in this particular book, by not having to worry about describing every room that she passed through.
Here's the thing, though.
Feels like
Here's the thing, though. We do get an every room description. We do. That is 100% in here. Like, it's not true that just because she's blind, we don't get descriptions.
I didn't mean we don't get descriptions. I meant...
But I'm saying it's just as description heavy as any other. Like, there's no lack of room description and area description. It's just that those descriptions are different.
Yeah, I don't know what my tip is then. Okay, what I was going to say with the description before you popped in is that it changed the perspective on what kind of thing got described. And I really like how it did that. I wasn't going to say that we didn't have any descriptions. But the way in which she interacted with all of these spaces was different from the now we are in a different room having a different conversation feel that it would have been very easy to have.
Yeah, transitions are different.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we also don't get... Actually, here, what about this as an aspiring writer tip?
Okay.
If you're gonna have a protagonist see or experience a world in a specific way, don't try to... It's not necessary to have them pretend to cater their descriptions to the audience. Just have them experience the world. Because this book does that very well. But I've also read books where the protagonist is supposed to be blind or deaf or have something else that affects their perception. And you get a lot of the book saying, well, I can't see this, but if you, the audience member, were here, you would see insert description.
I was like, how do they know that? The only time that
it doesn't even matter. It's not even a question of how do they know that. It's just this whole, like...
It's not good writing, yeah.
It's this whole, like, if you're going to have your character experience the world in a way, then take your audience members inside that world. Don't try to translate.
It did have a couple of points of translation, but those were mostly when magic enabled her to actually... The saturation of magic enabled her to actually have some aspects of sight that she doesn't normally get to experience, and those were very few and far between.
And I would argue those aren't those aren't even a translation. I would say that that's not even happening.
Oh, no. I'm saying the closest thing to, because she explicitly says, "Oh, this must be what what people mean when they say depth perception." That's why I bring it up as potentially a translation.
Yeah, but that's not what I'm talking about, because at no point in this book does she ever say, if you were here as the audience member, here's the thing that you would pick up on that I didn't. Like, that never happens. Ever. Right. Not even once.
Yeah, no, I agree there.
And it's just very good. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Like, that's what I'm saying, like, there isn't even a closest thing to it, because it just doesn't happen. And even then, like, with the magic and her kind of figuring out, like, her actually being able to see the magic and kind of figuring out, like, oh, that's what people are referring to. Like, even then, it's not... We don't even get a description of the things that she's looking at in that moment. We literally only get, oh, now I see depth perception. That's kind of cool. Anyways, moving on. Like, we don't even get to know what she's looking at.
Like, she doesn't
it's
even...
It's all about her. It's not about us and how we see the world. It's all about her and how she sees the world.
Like, yeah, like, it doesn't try and describe how depth perception works for people who have it or something. Yeah, which would have been the thing you were saying.
Nope. Yeah, exactly.
What is your favorite non-traumatic thing about the book?
I really enjoy... Oh man, I hope this wasn't mine from last book. It might have been. It's okay if it is, I guess. I really like the way the different godlings' powers are explored.
Yep, that was yours. I'm pretty sure that was yours last time.
It's just my favorite forever, I think. I think I highlighted... Oh man, I'm pulling up my notes again. I need to look at this again. I think, I'm just going to highlight I'm going to highlight a godling instead, a different godling. So last book, I think I talked about CA, and his childlike everything. So I really like Lil as the hunger. Because
stealing mine.
Yoink. No, I like how as the hunger, she's not just hungry for food. Anything, like, she is hungry to devour anything that is hungry for something else. So hunger for vengeance, hunger for actual food, hunger for love. I like that she develops, at the end of the book, she develops a taste for children's obsessive hunger to be loved and cared for. Like, that's great, actually, because she's not devouring children, but she is emotionally devouring their need to be loved, which means she cares about the children. Like
a complicated version of really the ending of Monsters, Inc.
Yeah, actually, yes, that. It's just really funny, and I really like it. Oh, okay, I have a different one, too, actually, that I want to mention. I had sent this in a photo of the page to you earlier, which I just think is great. At one point, without naming identities, Oree is praying to the deity who's running beside her because she forgets. She's literally just, like, in a stressful situation, and, like, she just says that god's name out loud, and he just gives her a look like, huh? What are you talking about? What are you doing right now? Like, what is wrong with you? And it's just very, very, very funny. Cause she just forgets that he's right there, and she doesn't even, like, she's not saying it as, like, trying to reach him. It's just an exclamation, but it's so funny to me.
Yeah. Mine, I really liked the depiction of Hado, and unfortunately I can't really say any specifics because there'd be massive spoilers. I really, really liked Hado and how he was handled, and we don't get a ton of him in the book, but what we get is all just, like, really, really good, and I liked it a lot.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we will catch you in a fortnight. All music used in this podcast was created by Nicole as HeartBeatArt Co. and is used with permission.
You can follow us on Twitter at Books That Burn, all one word.
You can email us with questions, comments, or book recommendations at booksthatburn@yahoo.com.
Support us on patreon.com/booksthatburn. All patrons get access to our upcoming book list and receive a one-time shout-out.
You can leave us an iTunes review. This helps people to find the show.
And find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening. We'll be back in 2 weeks.